Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Welcome to the Flower Lounge. This is July's Moon edition with Kristina Wingeier, our intuitive astrologer. And I'm coming at you from Singapore, sitting on a balcony on a rooftop, and the sun is rising, and I'm melting into a puddle under an umbrella. So I just misted myself with boundless wisdom, and I'm excited to have this conversation. This is a big month. Thank you for being here, Kristina.
Thank you, Katie. Good to see you. And it is a big month. There's a lot happening in July. And of course, what's, really on everybody's radar is, of course, the eclipses, 2 eclipses, a solar eclipse and a lunar eclipse. We actually have a Mercury retrograde this month as well. And we actually have 2 new moons because we have a new moon at the very end of the month. So it's a very, these are just the big ones. There's a lot of things happening along the way. So, I was thinking a lot when preparing for today about our conversation at the beginning of the year in January, because we were talking when we were really that was like the first series of eclipses in this 18-month cycle that we're in. And so we're in the middle series of eclipses this time. So if it's a 3-act play, 6 months apart, we're in that middle part of it. And so it's things that were initiated in January are really coming into bloom at this point. And it's also kind of midway between a longer arc of time. So I was just thinking a lot about, I actually started watching that Marie Kondo series again for some reason, because that's really coming up. We talked about that a lot at the January, and I feel like that's really appropriate this month. So we'll be talking about that as we get going. And the other thing I'll say about eclipses is that they don't affect everybody the same way. So it's not everybody is going to be having this really intense time, because they're very specific to your chart. So if you're somebody who has a lot of planets in Cancer or Capricorn, or even just something like a sun or a moon or a rising sign, something like that, they're probably, they affect you more than other people. But it's just important to remember, just because it's eclipse season, not everybody is going to fall apart. Okay. So it's pretty specific. And what I will say is that there are larger cycles, 18 and 19 year cycles. So you want to kind of be looking back into 18 and 19 years ago, 2000, 2001, and what kind of themes were coming up in your life. This may be another kind of iteration of major themes that you were working on, especially if those were pressurized times for you. Then I would think that this would be similar, in a different way, but similar. So I just wanted to kind of start out with that preamble. And so July begins. So the first week in July is pretty power packed. We start on a Monday with Mars changing signs. So Mars will move into Leo. This is a very active switch. Mars has been in Cancer and underwater, I'd say, and not really getting a lot of what it wanted to get done. There was a lot of blocks from Saturn and Pluto, and now Mars is past that. Mars is in Leo. Mars loves Leo. So, Mars is fired up and ready to go. And this is going to be carrying us through until August 16th. So we've got a good 6 weeks of Mars in Leo, which is going to be expressive and dramatic and passionate. Mars, of course, being taking action and our will and our desire and things like that. So that's very uplifting way to begin the month. But we are pretty low energy otherwise, because Tuesday is the new moon, which is the first eclipse in Cancer. And so, new moons are a time of new beginnings, and solar eclipses, this is a total solar eclipse, are new moons on steroids, kind of. So they're like really big beginnings. Since it's Cancer, the energy of nurturing and kind of mother energy, mother earth energy. I just wrote down like rebirth, like, there's something rebirthing or renewal or some kind of really big new beginnings in Cancer. And this is really, we've been getting a lot all month long. Last month in June, Mars and Mercury were in Cancer. So there's been a lot of information churned up about what we're ready to begin now around emotional connection, around inner security, around the sense of family and home, nourishment, taking care of ourselves, things like that. A lot of lessons I feel in the last half of June that have been led to lead to this moment where it's kind of a moment to begin again. You know what I'm saying? Very fertile. I mean, Cancer is a very fertile sign. The moon rules Cancer. It's very much about like these seeds that you're planting that will be, revealing themselves over the next 6 months. But there's also like when you're birthing something, sometimes there's a lot of struggle or pain, like labor, like it's hard work. And we're going to see some hard work this month from what we're planting on this new moon in Cancer. Something interesting that I heard today from another astrologer that I hadn't thought about before is that the eclipse itself, because the moon covers the sun, so like a new moon is a sun and a moon coming together, right? And when the eclipse covers the sun, the lights of the sun go out. So the sun goes dark for a minute, and then it kind of reboots itself once the moon removes. But when this moon covers the sun, it actually interacts with the Earth's auric field because it's blocking the light of the sun. So it's also like in those moments, the Earth is almost like very vulnerable, it feels like, for like new things to come in. So it's a very potent kind of conception time, I think, for new projects, especially anything that you're doing to just take better care of yourself, because Cancer is a caretaker and can kind of forget about themselves and taking care of everybody else. So anything that you can do to be taking better care of yourself so you can help more, I think will be really useful way to work with the energy, no matter what your sign is or whatever, right?
Like specifically for the first couple weeks of July or the whole month?
Just like the new moon thing, like that new moon energy. Like people like to make intentions working with the new moons, and it's a new moon in Cancer. And so Cancer's really a lot about nourishment and a lot about, with Cancer, it's like you have to tend to things. Cancer grows things and cooks things and makes things and, wants to feed people and clothe people. So that's like, but these are like things, it's like attending a mother-child relationship, but can we do that to ourselves? And there's a really big, strong theme around reparenting our inner child right now, with the North Node in Cancer, the mother, the South Node in Capricorn, the father, Chiron in Aries, the wounded child. It's pretty interesting. And they're all squaring each other. So it's, we have to do it to ourselves. We have to give that to ourselves so that we can take better care of the planet, and other people, but we have to start.
Okay. So for me, I would say it's time to take back up my running practice, which we were doing in Taiwan, right? And then there's so many good foods here. So we're trying everything. So new moon is the time to go like, okay, you tried everything. Now eliminate wheat and sugar 100%. And then walk down the street and get that like reflexology foot rub.
Oh, yeah, that sounds really good. I mean, and and really like, I think that a lot of times when it comes to resets, at least this has been my experience, is that sometimes it comes from a place of like, oh, I've been so bad and now I have to be good. So there's like a little bit of a punitive or restrictive quality to it in a way that is kind of not really nourishing. It's even though the food might be good for you. Do you know what I'm saying? So like,
it feels good to be healthy.
It feels good to be healthy, but like, making it because you want to do it, not because it's like, oh, I've been bad and now I need to be good, right? But like, yeah, it feels good to do this. Even it might take a few days to feel better, right? But you will feel good when you start to really nourish yourself. And it's not just food. Like what does your soul need for nourishment, right? And really with Cancer and Capricorn, we're thinking about security and feeling insecure and feeling like you're out of control, and so loss of control. And so really like that inner security, right? That's the morning practice, maybe, things like that. So it's a very, very intense new moon. Yeah, it's pretty potent. I'm looking at the chart right now. Let's see if I have, yeah.
Okay, so how can we take better care of ourselves? Those are questions we should be asking ourselves.
Exactly. How can we take better care of ourselves? And are you making choices out of fear or love, right? Because Capricorn can be authoritarian and that causes fear, right? And Cancer is wanting to tend and take care of things, nurture. Is it from love or is it from fear? Like a helicopter mom or something that's like really paranoid about making sure that everybody's okay. And it's kind of like from fear, right? Are we making the choices from fear or from love? I think that's important to remember or try to think about that. So that's the new moon. That's the eclipse on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, Venus moves into Cancer. So this week, Mars is changing signs. Venus is changing signs. This is not going to be a fun time for Venus. This is, love and money, we'll say, with Venus. We just experienced what happened when Mars and Mercury went through Cancer, because you have to do all this opposing to what's going on in Capricorn. So it's kind of intense territory to be going through, and Venus will be going through it this month. And I think that any emotional turmoil that you were experiencing like mid-June, like there's themes there and there's stuff there that you're still working on, but in a new way, right? With Venus. Now we're really getting to the heart of the matter. Before it was more like the mind with Mercury, or I can't get what I want with Mars. Now it's like we're at the heart of it with Venus, right? So that's important to pay attention to. And then it just keeps going this week. It's like, then on Thursday, there's this Saturn on the South Node, and Saturn's doing this conjunction with the South Node in Capricorn 3 times this year. So it's just with Saturn on the South Node, again, we're clearing out the things that we don't value anymore, that we don't need. So we're restructuring. And there can be, again, with Saturn can be very restrictive. It can feel authoritative. It can feel pressure and karmic energies. There's a lot of clearing going on. So all this work that we're doing is very purifying and cleansing this week. And this whole week long, Mercury's like inching ahead like a little tiny snail because Mercury is getting ready to station retrograde on Sunday in Leo. So like Mercury's been hardly doing anything this week. And so that can also lead to some frustration because Mercury's in Leo feeling all fiery, but not really making much movement. So Mercury stations retrograde on Sunday, and the retrograde will be until the end of the month from July 7th to the 31st. And Mercury will be in 2 signs during this retrograde. So starting out in Leo and then moving back into Cancer on July 18th. So it's kind of like a very different experience with Mercury retrograde in Leo, feeling all fired up and conjunct Mars and very activated and dramatic and expressive, and then getting back into Cancer later on where it gets kind of emotional and, so Mercury review, all the Mercury retrograde things. We always talk about them. It's just a time to kind of review, repattern, recreate. I don't know, with the Cancer and Leo energy, it just feels to me like it's like being able to value yourself, value others as well, and to be able to speak from the heart, to be able to be in touch with your emotions and be healing and kind of evolving rather than getting stuck in childish drama and emotional temper tantrums. If that makes sense. So that's a busy first week. We're done. No, I mean, that's just, both all personal planets do and an eclipse. So it's a very intense beginning of the month. You might be feeling low energy, right? So take care of yourself. That's what that new moon in Cancer is saying as well. It's like, take care of yourself. If you're feeling tired, pace yourself. Don't and here in the States, it's a holiday week. So people tend to get a little crazy around the 4th of July, it's a lot of loud celebrations and it can be a little overstimulating. I'd say you really want to, take care of yourself no matter where you live. So that's the first week. Any thoughts around how's the elixir going to help us this month? What are we working with?
If you're in the Flower Revolution program, it's a big, bright yellow, sunny flower called California Glory. And it's all about helping us evaluate where we hesitate or hold back versus unleash our wildest self. Wild, not meaning firecrackers and gunshots, but just being able to fully be ourselves without restricting ourselves in any way. So it's helping us evaluate how we communicate with people. What's our tone of voice? What's our body language like? What's our posture? When are we in our powerful presence right here? And when are we holding back and talking like this because of some, pattern response or reason that we have. So whatever your favorite flavor it is, there's going to be lots of different favorite flavors. It's just how you communicate through it all and when you are most connected with your powerful presence and really just looking at what gets you there and what takes you away from that spot and just being more aware. If you're not in the Flower Revolution program, I would recommend Truth Teller. It's a combination of flower essences similarly to help you look at where you're speaking your truth, where you're able to really ask for what you want, to feel like you deserve it, know you deserve it, where you can advocate for yourself or others and speak up, speak your mind without holding back or feeling oh gosh, I really shouldn't say that. Telling the truth.
They sound really good for the retrograde, for the Mercury retrograde in particular. They sound, because that being able to connect with that most powerful presence of your voice really is when you're connected from your heart, right? And that's so Leo with ruling the heart, but it's also so tender and Cancer and emo, that bridging that gap between the boldness and the tenderness and learning even how to speak from the tender place, being brave enough to speak. Wow, that's really good. Well, I like them both. I've been playing with them, so I think they feel good. Yay. All right. Well, week 2, I wrote down walking the talk. I don't know why, but I did. Let's see what's happening this week. So Monday, we pay attention to Chiron. Not all astrologers do. Chiron's stationing retrograde on Monday, so that's going to be a little review for Chiron of the early Aries territory where Chiron's been traveling. I've really been thinking a lot about Chiron and Aries as the wounded child. The wounded and the archetypes. I don't know if you've ever seen the Carolyn Mace archetypes, but she has the wounded child as one of the child archetypes. And so, I have this card here because I was looking at it today, and it's the light attributes of the wounded child are to awaken compassion and desire to serve other wounded children, opens the learning path of forgiveness. And the shadow attributes blames all dysfunctional relationships on childhood wounds, resists moving on through forgiveness. So this feels like that's Chiron retrograde, is being able to review any challenges we've been having since Chiron moved into Aries earlier this year. And again, I feel like there's a lot of reparenting ourselves and, healing our wounds and healing our inner child so that inner child isn't at the wheel, which for most people is. You can just see it. People are acting out of childhood pain. They don't even know it, So this retrograde on this day is also, it's a pretty volatile day astrologically. The Mercury and Mars are conjunct in Leo, and Leo is also an archetype of the child. Venus makes a square to Chiron. So it feels like some just tension and maybe some irritability and some opportunities again with whatever's coming up to bug you this month is here for you to really find the medicine in it and heal it, not to rehash it, not to live through it again, right? But Chiron is the wounded healer, but I feel like we get fixated on the word wounded and we forget about the healer part. Chiron is really about finding your authenticity and healing and not staying stuck in the wound. So that's how we begin the week with that. That's subtle, but I feel like it's pretty potent at the same time. And then this week is just kind of a low energy week because the sun in Cancer is making those oppositions to Saturn, the South Node, and Pluto. So we talked about this last month because Mercury did it, Mars did it. These energies are really kind of like blocks to getting what you want, right? And a lot of times the blocks feel like they're coming from, like, you don't have control over a situation, right? It's a block coming from some outer authority. So again, we get back to that, my inner authority, my inner security, like, how do I handle it when I don't get what I want? Because this week there's going to be a little bit of not necessarily getting what you want. You know, there's going to be some opposition to the sun, to your agenda, perhaps. But, you know, it just kind of goes throughout the week. Sun opposed Saturn on Tuesday, Sun opposed Pluto on Sunday, Mars and Uranus square on Thursday. It's a kind of a volatile week. There's a lot of combustion in the air with the fire from Mars, and then you've got the water with Cancer. So you got the fire and the water, you got a lot of steam, you know what I mean? You got the humidity. What happens when it gets really humid? How do people behave when they get hot and sticky?
Meltdown. Or look for shade.
But like, you're stuck in line, you don't have any water, you're in that situation. How do you cope with that pressure? Like, I feel like maybe that's why I wrote Walking the Talk, because I think this week we get to like cope with some pressure and see how we handle it, right? Do we melt down? If we melt down, can we forgive ourselves for melting down? Or do we, can we somehow find the inner shade? I don't know. Are we going to throw some shade at Pammy? What's going to go on? I don't know. But it's a potent week. You spray on your truth teller and take a California glory and let it rip. I don't know. Like, it might be, oh, in the middle of the week also there's a Sun-Neptune trine. So I feel like people might be just really wanting to kind of check out, a little bit of escapism coming up. And so I wrote down healthy escape routes. So with that Pisces Cancer energy, like music or creative practice or spirit meditation, like nature, like, there are healthy and restorative ways to escape. And I would definitely encourage as much of that as possible so that you're working to help support your parasympathetic nervous system when there's all this stimulation and pressure happening. So there's that. Any thoughts from you, my dear?
I mean, the only thing that just keeps coming to my mind is the practice of being aware every time you engage with someone else, how you're showing up, and just having that awareness of like, where's my body? How does my body feel like? What's my posture like? What's my tone of voice? How am I presenting myself to the world? Am I speaking from my heart? Like, those are really good sort of like anchors or reminders, every time you encounter another human being in your day, if that's like a trigger in your mind to say like, okay, where is my body? How is my posture? How am I speaking? That this whole thing could just be like one big awareness trigger and help us move into like, right? Because if you notice yourself talking kind of like meekly, you'll be like, oh, what am I doing in my upper register? Like, why am I not embodying something in this moment? Then you'll change it. But until we're aware of something like that, we don't typically change it. We just operate out of the pattern. So this sounds like a good couple of weeks for being aware and just noticing new things.
I love that. That's really beautiful. That's so the awareness trigger. That's like that boot camp, and it's strength. So you're strengthening the muscles rather than like you said, operating out of those repeating patterns of reactivity. It's really like that reactivity or learning or responsiveness, right? Taking responsibility for yourself is responding reactivity is likely from many, many people during this time. It's not unusual even when things are good. So, I mean, when it's easier, this is a little bit of a rough time. Yeah, that's beautiful, Katie. Thank you. All right. So the third week of July is when we have our second eclipse. And this is a partial lunar eclipse. It's happening on Tuesday, July 16th. So both eclipses are on Tuesdays this month. And this eclipse, let me look at this chart. Again, it's in Capricorn. So the moon will be in Capricorn and the sun will be in Cancer. So it's an opposition. And what's really going to be, if you like to think about cycles of time like I do, you really want to think back to January, this beginning of this year. That new moon in Capricorn was an eclipse, January 6th. It was the beginning of the year. Everybody was all excited, you know, the fresh new year. It's kind of a 6-month check-in. And also really whatever, we were talking a lot about the Marie Kondoing our lives back then. And so this is a point where you can kind of reflect on the past 6 months. Have you been eliminating the things that don't spark you joy, right? Have you been focusing on the essentials and trimming away the excess, right? Because that's been a big theme. And if so, then this is going to be, you know, a very clearing, like continue the clearing energy. But if you haven't been doing that, or if you've been compromising yourself, you might feel a lot of pressure to all of a sudden really purge. Like this is a great month for cleaning and whatnot. So, because this full moon is like, full moons always pull the energy out. Like they're like a poultice, like an herbal poultice, you know, like this that pulls up the toxins to the top, to the surface to clear it out. And so this is clearing out like old grief, old trauma, old toxins, old like lineage stuff, old weird karmic patterns from the past, because this full moon is conjunct Pluto, which is this major transformational death and rebirth kind of energy. It's also can be involved with like resisting it and kind of struggling with it, because Pluto, wherever Pluto is, there's often power struggles. The South Node and Saturn are also very strong in this eclipse. And so it's big, it's a big clearing eclipse, but what's also happening is that Venus is in the mix, because Venus is kind of like opposite Saturn and the South Node. So you really, if you're not, again, choosing to the things like living your life from a place of like, this is what brings me joy, this is what's the most important, these are my priorities, you really might feel like sad that you're not doing that. Like your heart might be hurting with that Venus opposition. You might really have a moment of reckoning, like, I really need to listen to my truth, right? And it's that kind of reckoning moment of really aligning with what's the most important to you. You know, it's kind of like if you had to leave your house all of a sudden and grab a suitcase, like what would you put in there? It's kind of like that, like very basic, most important things. And otherwise, get rid of it.
Can you remind me again, what's the South Node Saturn pattern? Like, what is that? How does that make us feel, or how does it affect us?
Well, it clears, it makes us feel pressure. It makes us feel, Saturn can feel like the restraints of time, the limitations of mortality, I would say. It can feel like authority figures. It can feel like limits, right? And so it feels like loss sometimes. Sometimes Saturn feels like fear again. Like all the things that are scary in the world that you can't control. It's like Saturn and Pluto on the South Node all together, kind of in Capricorn, all kind of are talking about that. So, and the moon's in there. The moon is, you know, it's not the moon's happy place to be in Capricorn. First of all, it's not a happy place for the moon. It's a kind of an emotionally restricted place. So it might feel really uncomfortable. And so with Venus on the North Node in Cancer and the sun in Cancer, we're kind of taken back to that new moon energy of taking care of ourselves. What do you love? What are you tending? What are you nurturing? You know, if you're things that don't fall under that, like you probably don't need them, and you can probably kind of let them go. A lot about boundaries, right? Saturn also is a lot about boundaries. So giving yourself good boundaries in any way, shape, or form that you might need them. And that literally can be like clearing, like, I really think it's a good month to clean your closets. I'm serious. It's a time to do another round of getting rid of what you don't need, what doesn't make you happy. Otherwise, it's just this accumulation. It's clearing out of accumulation.
How would you apply that rule to somebody who's traveling, like myself? I don't have closets. I just have a suitcase.
God, I don't know. I just unpacked my suitcase and I got rid of so many clothes when I was back in my closet.
But like people who are, say, like doing their summer travels, or they're away with their kids, or they're at the cabin, or they're, I don't know.
Well, I guess what I would say is, you know, sometimes when you're traveling and like you pick up a leaflet or a flyer or something from like everywhere that you've been, and you start to accumulate all this extra stuff. You know what I mean? From your travels, like weird things like, oh, I had this great drink one night at the poolside and I had this little umbrella from my drink. You know what I mean? How you just start to, and there can be like little souvenirs, and maybe, who knows, maybe you're crafty and you go home and you put it in a book, or I don't know what people do. Like, I'm not crafty like that. I want to take people's crafts away from them. But you know how you just kind of like accumulate, even in travel sometimes, like extra junk? Like maybe it's, you can go through what you've gathered and like say, do I really need to carry this around, you know? Or maybe there's a book that you brought traveling that you finished that you can leave at the hotel. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe you realize, maybe you do get rid of clothes. Maybe you like brought clothes with you that you don't want anymore and you find a place to donate them. Who knows? I mean, but I would say, like, in your traveling itself, really paying attention to what you're doing and where you're going, and spending time doing and going places that feel meaningful to you, not just to do them because, oh, we got to do this, this, and this, it's on the list, but more like, wow, if we just did this, we could really have a really meaningful time, feel really connected, really understand this museum or this whatever, rather than doing 10, you know. So less is more, I would say, in travel. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And you can also just kind of review. And when you go home and unpack, then you can clean your closet. I literally took out a massive garbage bag full of clothes by unpacking my suitcase and going in my closet, my drawers. I was like, I just feel like getting rid of stuff. And it was so fun. And I turned on the Marie Kondo show while I was doing it, just to get inspired by her voice. And I love it. You know, I just love that show. It really makes me feel good. So funny. Yeah, she is, right? I love when she sits down and connects with the house.
That's the best part, right?
Right? And like that's, I think about with like the Cancer Capricorn and the inner and the security and the inner security and like I feel like that when I saw her like kind of kneeling in somebody's home and connecting, like what about if we did that no matter where we were, you know, that whatever practice that brings us right home and connected with our home, with our center, no matter what, like that helps build that muscle of authenticity and moving towards things that bring us more joy. Certainly in life, we're always going to have to do things that we're not happy doing. It's just part of life. We're human. We encounter that, but we can carry a connection with ourselves and our knowing of what really moves us. And we can encounter these things in a more connected way, right? Maybe not. Maybe we have a meltdown because it's really hot and sticky, you know. Pluto is a crucible. So Pluto is on that moon. Let me look at this chart, see if there's anything else. Yeah, that's the big stuff. I mean, I guess I will say one more thing is that with the energy of Cancer, it's like the mother, and the energy of Capricorn can be the father, right? And I wrote father time And since, okay, this is random. Cancer rules the moon. So I'm like grandmother moon. Sometimes our parents are like too close and they're like, you know, there's all this trauma and triggers with them. But our grandparents, you know, how grandparents get to have totally different relationships with the grandkids than with their kids. It's like way more playful and way more spacious. And like, it's kind of like that. Like, how can we find that kind of energy and give that to ourselves, right? With this father time, Capricorn energy, I also thought about, there's this concept in shamanic astrology that Capricorn is the archetype of the 13 grandmothers. Have you heard about the 13 grandmothers? Mm-hmm. Right. So there's this really deeply nurturing energy there if we want to connect with it below the level of like status and authorities and boundaries. There's something deeper in Capricorn and much more mystical. That nurturing, like giving, like how can we give ourselves good boundaries, but like a grandmother would, rather than, there's more space with the grandparents and the grandchildren, I feel like. And it's loving, and it's also like a maturity, like I've been through it, you know, and it's like there's a spaciousness and there's not so much anxiety. When you're parenting, it's so close and intense, but when you're in a different life cycle, so there's more maturity, and I don't know, it's a different, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's these random notes that I wrote down, so I guess I'm speaking to
it's
them.
like reparenting, but you're reparenting from the grand.
I don't know, I thought that sounded kind of nice. Yeah, so bake yourself some cookies. I mean, hell, the sun's in Cancer. Eat your pain away.
And then in the fourth week, is there another new moon?
Oh, no. I'm not done with the third week. God, that was just the moon. Okay, sorry. The other thing that happens this week, right after the full moon, is that Mercury moves back into Cancer in the retrograde. So that's a little touchy, right? There is this, before that happens, there is this Venus-Neptune trine, which I think can be very compassionate and feel really good. It can also, again, whenever we get Neptune, it can be another moment to kind of check out. But it does have the potential to feel really good on Thursday with that Venus-Neptune trine. And then on Friday, Mercury goes into Cancer. So now all the sensitivities and tender territory that's been triggered, like Mercury's going back to it. Mercury is on a reconnaissance mission, right? It's retrograde. It's to review and to repattern, right? And so Mercury moves into Cancer on Friday, and then on Sunday, it's kind of a double-edged sword day because Venus opposes Capricorn. Ouch, power struggles, right? Maybe some obsessive compulsive behavior around love or money. Like, don't necessarily play the lottery if you're feeling crazy. It's like, just watch it. But then also on that day, we have the Mercury Cazimi, with the Sun and Mercury in conjunction in Cancer. And this is the beginning of a new 4-month Mercury cycle. So there's, I've been studying the Mercury cycles lately, and there's 3 retrogrades a year. There's 4-month cycles. And so these 4-month kind of projects or time frames with Mercury, like this is a new cycle beginning on the Cazimi. So I feel like this Cazimi is going to give potentially like a healing insight, right? Because it's in that very late Cancer. Everybody's been going through it. Mars went there, Mercury, the Sun, Venus is, it's all this intense emotional commotion. This Cazimi feels like it can be like, I know what I need. I know. Now I know. I know how to ask for it. I know how to give it to myself. I get it. It's good information that can come from this, in my opinion. So that's week 3. Week 4 is much better. Week 4, the clouds begin to clear. Monday, the Sun enters Leo, right? So the Sun gets out of Cancer. The Sun is very strong in Leo, very happy. It's a very creative, vital, kind of like uplifting energy for the Sun. With the Sun in Leo, things you want to watch out for are kind of like a lot of drama or overbearing behavior, very loud and kind of bellicose. And you also want to watch out for burnout or like becoming very performative. Leo's very dramatic sometimes. So, but in general, like this is really good, the Sun in Leo. It's going to feel good. It's going to feel clarifying. It's going to help to start to dry things out. after the Cancer pity party that we've all been going through. So that's a really nice thing. And then midweek on Wednesday, Mercury retrograde and Venus come together in Cancer. Feels very tender. And I wrote down a meeting of the heart and the mind. Like, again, I feel like there's this way that there's these understandings and these healings and this kind of information and connection coming through with this like post-eclipse kind of encounters that the planets are having. Thursday, yeah.
Remind me again, what's happening then that's creating that meeting of the mind?
Mercury and Venus are conjunct in Cancer. So Mercury retrograde and Venus meet each other they pass each other. Mercury is going backwards, Venus is going forward, but they make a connection in very late Cancer. So it feels very like tender meeting of the heart and the mind from these kind of like Kazemi and post-eclipse season, like ahas and figuring out how to ask for what you need. This is when by the end of the month and you've been taking your truth teller or your glory and you're finally like really, really able to speak from your heart and speak from your emotional truth and ask for what you need, right? Or listen to what somebody else needs, because listening is very much a part of conversation. And sometimes we're always asking. That's very, very, our inner child wants to always ask for what we need. Sometimes we can give somebody the gift of listening to them. That's also very beautiful, right? Or listening to ourselves, listening to our own needs, giving them to ourselves. So it feels really nice to me. A little melancholy, but in a good way, a little bittersweet. And then Thursday is like, woo, because Mars and Jupiter trine each other. So Mars is in Leo, Jupiter's in Sag. It's all like fiery and uplifting and feeling all like victorious and successful. Mars is the first planet in a long time to get a nice activation from Jupiter, the inner planet or like personal planet, because we've had so much Saturn, Pluto, South Node. Jupiter's hasn't really been able to help out. We're going to get a lot of help from Jupiter next month, but Mars is the first one. And so it feels good that Mars and Jupiter will feel very euphoric, I think, for a lot of us. So just like a good day to be very confident, to like kind of maybe make an ask or present something new. Like it's a day for feeling confident and successful and kind of vital, right? That's a nice feeling. And then the next couple of days, Venus moves out of Cancer and moves into Leo. So we got more energy in Leo, more drying out, a little sass, a little fire for Venus. Venus will be in Leo from July 27th until August 21st. So we have a nice time where we get to have a little more fun, a little more play, a little lightening up. Yeah, so and then week 5 is like the end of July, beginning of August, but July does end with a Sun-Uranus square, which may bring an unexpected challenge or struggle, right? Uranus is always kind of unexpected things happening.
What day is that?
July 29th. So just if something pops out of nowhere, whoa, I'm feeling so good, all this Leo, and I made it through the eclipses, and whoa, where's this coming from? Like it might be this Uranus kind of sun square. It's a little bit at odds, not a little struggle and unexpected, but it's enlivening. It's an enlivening thing. It's not necessarily like, oh man, I can't, it's more like, whoa, okay, I got to navigate this. And I don't know, it feels perky to me, but maybe I'm a weirdo. And then on the last day of the month, we have another new moon, the new moon in Leo, and Mercury stations direct also. So that starts to shift the energy. Of course, with Mercury stationing direct or retrograde, Mercury is very still. So it's definitely not a time for a lot of movement with Mercury, but it is a shift in direction. And so as we move forward into August, it'll be a whole different scene as Mercury kind of unravels and goes back through Cancer and goes back into Leo and perks up. And the new moon itself, I mean, it's pretty electrifying. It's got a nice aspect to Uranus. I don't know if we want to talk about this so much now or we want to talk about it for next month. It is in July, but it's kind of August, But anyway, it's a new moon in Leo. It's really kind of like bringing the heart and the will power towards creatively expressing the growth and transformation from eclipse season, right? It's creative, it's vital, vitalizing, uplifting. Jupiter's in the picture. Venus is in the picture. It's pretty electric. Expansion and love and money. And just a feeling of kind of like, okay, we made it. And now it's kind of lightening up. The sun's coming out. The storm clouds are parting for a while. Eclipse season is like turbulent weather patterns. It's like being on a turbulent flight. And it's just a little uncomfortable for a while, but then it smooths out again. It's really normal. Every 6 months, eclipse season comes and we get this astro turbulence. And again, not everybody's going to be feeling it. It's really going to be specific to your natal charts, right? That's what's going to, if you're like a lot of Cancer, Capricorn, or even Aries and Libra, these cardinal signs, they're the ones that are getting the hardest aspects from the eclipses. So because
it's not just like Capricorn, Cancer.
Well, it's mostly Capricorn, Cancer, but if you're an Aries or a Libra, if you have your sun at 10 degrees Aries or 24 degrees Libra, you'll be getting a hard aspect from the eclipses, a square. So squares, conjunctions, oppositions, those are all the kind of more intense aspects. The trines and the sextiles, they're like, woohoo. So the cardinal signs are what are getting like the most challenges. So even if you're not you may not be getting the challenges, but maybe your loved one is, or your boss, or your kid, or something like that. So it might be in your life, but may not be. You might be like, why is this person melting down every day? I don't even know, because I feel fine. So it could be something like that, where it's not you, but it's like somebody you love, or somebody who you don't love, but who's in your life, really causing trouble. Yeah. So July.
That's how it is.
It's going to be fun. I don't know. All of this is hitting my chart like so hard. I'm just like, woo, what a ride. It's hard. I've been having a hard time, but it's also like a lot of growth comes from struggle and from challenges. That's how I experience it. So very enlivening times.
I love it. Anything else? So like if we just went over like the main themes, just like a brush stroke, wrapping it up.
Renewal, a big clearing and cleansing. Again, I would say thinking about what are you tending to? What are you nurturing in your life? There's that Cancer energy is very much about tending and fresh beginnings. Endings with it's interesting too, like it's the beginnings and endings are both big this month, because we start out with the new moon north node eclipse. That's beginnings and future visioning, and then we have the south node full moon eclipse, which is like releasing and ending. So big, like eclipses are always about endings and beginnings, but they feel very amplified this month. So really noticing like what's beginning, what are you stepping into, and what are you stepping away from? Like I feel like that can be helpful. And then really learning how to take care of ourselves and take care of our emotional needs and become more self-reliant. Reparenting our inner child is pretty big. The retrograde itself is that learning how to speak from the heart and from a place of emotional connection. And what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Just kidding. Not really. Yeah. It's a bumpy month.
And like you said before, since it's all about what are you tending, either for yourself or encouraging others who are having tension around you, to just do those activities that recharge you, right? The self-care and get the massage, go get acupuncture, take your herbs, make your teas, eat your dark chocolate, go for those walks, do a little stretching before you go to bed. Whatever those things are. What do you do? What do you do to stay balanced? You just went on a long trip. You just came back.
Oh, well, this year I've actually been doing a lot of yoga nidra. So that's a meditative practice that you do laying down. So I really feel like that is very restorative to me. I also just love laying down like in the park on the grass and just connecting with the earth and the sky, and I'm connecting with my breath, even if I'm not like at the park and like laying down or in my bed before I go to sleep, like really just connecting with my breath like that and breathing into all my body parts. Like that feels really restorative and easy and free and always available. Like those kind of really simple things. And I really think that, I've been thinking a lot about resting and digesting, like making sure I have that phase in my life, because we're very goal-oriented people. We're kind of always striving. Sometimes even in our practices, we're striving. And so I'm really trying to learn how to receive more and restore. So those are really simple ways that I do. How about you?
I love that. Right now, I mean, making time. So when I was in Taiwan, making time to go to the park was amazing. And whether that was like running or walking or reflexology, rock path, or gua sha, doing a lot of gua sha, doing a lot of exercises. That's coming up a lot, like gong exercises, very simple things that you can do when you get time along the meridians of your body.
I roll on a foam roller and do the same thing. It's like it kind of like a similar thing. Like I will do it on my meridian lines, on my legs, on my back. I love it. It's so good.
It's like, it's crazy how, like in the West, we see people doing like gua sha on their face, but we go to the park and there's like people, so they have these like bars, right? That people will come and get off the wheelchairs and like walk along the bar. But then other people will throw their leg up on top of the bar and like gua sha their calf.
Yeah, that sounds so good. It hurts so good.
Something that you can do for yourself. I really like that. So many things that we can do for ourselves. It's nice to go and get a massage and have somebody like, fix me. But it's also really nice to know that, if you just do these couple things in the morning or evening or before you go to bed or whatever, that you can really enhance your vitality.
Totally. Yeah, I agree. It can be very simple. We make it very complex. And that speaks to kind of the Saturn in the South node. It's like simplifying things. It doesn't have to be complex. What can you give yourself, right? What's available in this moment?
And then let me just mention, because I was talking about going to the park, we're actually releasing a video on YouTube with our movement program. So if anybody's interested in just like, what are some of those crazy movements that they do in the Far East, that all the hundreds of old people are doing in the parks, that'll be up and available on YouTube soon. And then we're also releasing a meditation through sound, like audio recordings in Taiwan and Taipei.
Ooh.
You're interested in traveling, but you've never been to the Far East, or you want to kind of feel what it feels like to be here, but would also like to learn some really specific methods for how to use listening, which is interesting. You mentioned like a big part of speaking your mind is also listening. So we'll be covering like 7 different ways, unique ways of listening. So just throwing that out there if anybody feels drawn to that. That's cool.
I'm drawn to it. That's fascinating. I actually have a picture here of the inner ear, like printed out, because I've been, which is like, it's like, I know it's called the labyrinth of the inner ear. It's so crazy looking, but like listening and hearing and is really coming up repeatedly these last few days. So of course you're talking about sound healing. It's like, of course, that sounds really good. I'm excited for all of that. I forget, when you were talking a little while ago, I just wanted to say that thing that you said also about letting this month, if you find yourself getting off track or overwhelmed, that the awareness trigger concept, I really like that. And again, like just checking in with, like, staying embodied, staying in your body is a really big deal. And so whatever you can do to help you stay grounded and stay in your body, like those what we're just talking about, that restorative and the gua sha and all that, but like your breath is your best friend. And just, maybe even throughout the day, taking a moment. I know it sounds like we say we'll do it, or it sounds hokey, but just to breathe, a moment of breathing without any closing your eyes and going in. And that's like, Marie Kondo sitting at the, kneeling on the floor of the home to connect, like that's what you're doing. And that's going to give you so much resilience to navigate whatever crazy turbulence you might encounter.
Because I think when we have turbulence, we're like, oh God, what is this? Let me figure it out. It's more like, the mantra's more like, just stay.
Totally.
Stay with yourself.
I'm really into being okay with not knowing right now. It's been really liberating to just be okay with not knowing right now instead of trying to figure things out. Figuring things out is exhausting.
It just requires a lot.
I mean, listening and being and not knowing and just showing up. Yeah, I think these are really simple, completely available, but also really challenging, right? Because we override our system all the time, constantly going, constantly striving, constantly trying to fix ourselves. I think we have a lot more wholeness than we give ourselves credit for if we just slow down and drop into it,
Definitely. Be your own best friend.
Yeah, it's a great month. I think it's wonderful. I'm excited. Seriously, let's do it. Let's grow. Let's clear. Let's grow. Let's take care of ourselves. Imagine a world of people taking care of themselves and taking care of each other from a place of love and not fear. What if you just did that in your home? What if you just did it in your own mind? It's pretty profound.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who's listening to the Moonshine episode. As always, we'll have all of the specifics with dates and all the little information. So if you're taking notes, you can refer back. I usually at like 3 or 4 points during the month, I'm like, what is going on? So then I refer back to the blog post, and that's kind of a nice resource. If you're more interested in how are these eclipses going to specifically hit your natal chart and affect your life, and what are the things you should keep your eyes on, of course, you can always make a one-on-one individual consultation with Kristina, and she can go over how it's specifically affecting you versus, just the whole.
Oh, yeah. I've been doing lots of sessions lately. It's been really wonderful to see people coming in right now. People are going through a lot of changes right now, a lot of growth. It's exciting times, I think. So, yes. Yay!
Okay, and then we'll see you back in August. Have a great summer month and drink lots of water and stay cool.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to The Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.